Questions for Myles?
I guess Myles, coming here to the SEC from the NAIA and just the confidence and the skill set that you bring into this new team, how confident are you that you're able to translate all that to the SEC level?
I think I'm extremely confident. I think the main thing is to just make sure I remember who I am and what I do best. Remember what my niche is, which is obviously playing hard and playing defense. I stick to that, and I can excel in this league.
Just noted there's a big change in the grind here than where he came from in the mid-major. Did you kind of notice that when you got here, that there's a little different speed to things?
Yeah, we work 3 times as hard as we did in my last school. But I'm still used to the grind, working hard, and that just comes along with the territory. When you're a basketball player, you strive for greatness. You're gonna work 10 times as hard the more you move up a level. So it's worth it.
Having your former head coach in a support staff role here in Stacey Hollow, has that kind of made the transition a little bit smoother, knowing that there's somebody who's familiar with you and your game?
Yes, very much so. It's good having Coach Stacey with me because he was there through it all from day one of me being a freshman coming up. So whenever I'm feeling down on myself, whenever I feel those days where I tend to feel inadequate because I'm missing shots or etc. He's always there to remind me, keep me going, and yeah, it's definitely the perfect situation having him here.
I think it was maybe last year, 2 years ago, where your team kind of had a tragedy with a hurricane coming in, and then just having to work, around that and all that. Do you feel like, that gave you a lot more appreciation for the game, knowing that all the stuff outside could happen?
Yeah, it just reminds you of how easy something can go away, and it kind of helps you, become stronger in the sense that. When there's a will, there's a way. So we didn't have a gym. We made a way to find a gym. We made a way to work on our game. Without having a gym. Some days we didn't have a gym to practice in. So we're all in the room, kind of going over plays, doing form shooting. Without a ball in the living room or something like that. So, yeah.
Touched on the transition being easier, having a familiar coach here with you, but just on the court, how have you kind of felt your game maybe take that step since coming here?
That's a great question. I think I've been able to. I'm trying to be more detailed. I think Coach Davis is obviously the perfectionist, so he's honest about every single detail, and that's something that I'm actually not used to. So I can feel myself being more detailed and starting to think the game a little bit more. So yeah, that's the way to translate it.
I know y'all had a scrimmage and played at the Bahamas, but getting that game in the other night here in this arena, that kind of helped settle y'all into the season.
I think so. I think we were able to look at the things that we needed to work on, and then obviously look at the things that we improved on. I think it was a good start to our games at the Pavilion, and we're looking to capitalize on that on Monday.
I think y'all went 37-1 last year in route to the NAIA National Championship. Having gone through that and only losing one game during that stretch, when you look at some of your new teammates around you, they kind of see that you as kind of that guy that it's just one game at a time, and not really worrying about games 10, 20 games from now, but just one game at a time.
Can you repeat the question again? I'm not sure I understand what you're saying.
No, you're good. Sorry. Just having gone 37-1 last year off of the national championship, bringing a lot of winning obviously here, but when all these teammates looking at you, do they kind of see you as a guy who just kind of takes it one game at a time, knowing that it's a grind from here on all the way until March?
I think so. I think a lot of the guys. And I wouldn't say these guys in particular, but I think a lot of people would see my level that I come from as not as good as a level. So a lot of people look down on it. But at the end of the day, you can't sleep on the resume. It's not easy to almost go up. Have a perfect record. But I do think a lot of the guys respect that and understand that it does take one game at a time, and then I'm willing to help them take that step, and they can help me take that step as well.
You being one of 4 guys in this roster who are formerly Defensive Player of the Year in their respective conferences and all of that, offensively, what do you think, a lot of people are going to be surprised for between y'all 4 players?
Offensively, I think the shooting. I think, Jay has a crazy mid-range game. Theo can get it done. He can step out to the three-point line and get it done. Obviously, you got Josh Mbala who can do it all pretty much, and you got me, obviously, who, I can knock down an open 3 or whatever with a hand in my face. So I think the shooting's going to be one of the biggest surprises for everybody, for us coming in.
Any further questions?
Thank you, Myles.
Thank you.
Both Kirk and Aaron, good.